Welcome to part 2 of episode 1, Setting the Feel. We're going to dig a little deeper into binary cam systems that you're going to find on elite bows, and also we're going to talk about setting the timing of those cams and how to adjust the limb stops and what that does to your let-off. As we dig deeper further into the series of these videos, we're going to also explain when the cams are out of time and how the bow tunes in relationship to when cables move or stretch, things of that nature. But right now, let's dig deep into this and let's get started. In order for us to determine all the changes that are going to happen when I start tweaking on this cam and moving it around with the limb stops and the timing, we gotta first at least set our control standard. So in the last video, I set this bow up for me personally because this is going to be my hunting bow. And it's 30-inch draw, and it is also about 59.5 pounds. But I don't know how much holding weight it has at this moment. I do, however, have it set in the maximum amount of let-off that the bow will actually offer. And number one, here's how you get there. Your timing has to be set exactly perfect on both top and bottom cam. Secondly, you have to make sure that your limb stops are moved all the way out as far away from the center of the bow as possible, and that will get you to the maximum amount of let-off. So obviously the minimum amount of let-off that you would have in this exact same setting, if you move the limb stop all the way towards the center of the bow, both top and bottom. Obviously you have to set the timing of the limb stops, make sure those are correct, but when they're moved all the way in towards the center of the bow, that's the minimum amount of let-off that you'll have. So the next step here is to check and see what the holding weight actually comes out to be. 59.4, so we're roughly 59.5 pounds. This little X-Spot portable scale is a fantastic little scale too, and for the price, you can't hardly beat them. They're available at lancasterarchery.com. Okay, so let's see where this goes to on the let up. I got 7 pounds. 7 pounds of holding weight on 59.5 pounds of draw weight is about 88%. So that's pretty good let-off. Let's check out and see what the minimum amount of let-off is going to be on this bow at this particular setting. Again, the setting on these cams is dead even timing top and bottom. So changing the let-off is really simple on this particular cam. Actually, on all elite bows, it's basically the same thing. You simply loosen the limb stop. On the top, if the bow is setting like this, it'll just fall towards the middle of the bow, and that's the direction you want to move it, is towards the center of the bow. So I'll tighten that back up. It's the same thing on the bottom. Simply loosen the screw here, slide it all the way up towards the middle of the bow and give it a good snug. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the bow back and check the timing of the cam and make sure that the limb stops are actually hitting at the exact same time. Okay, so now I'm checking the timing of the draw stops again just to make sure that everything is equal. While I'm here, I want you to look and see this. Okay, notice the limbs close to the cam, right in this area right there. Okay, see how I'm raising the camera up and down and you can see both sides of the limbs, or you can see the other limb. So when you're setting this timing, you want to get to where you can see straight across both limbs, like that right there. Alright, now if you look at that screw that's right above those limbs, you can see that it's kind of got a little ring around it. And that little ring is basically sitting right at the top of that limb. So we want the bottom to look identical to that. So let's see what we can do here. I have to adjust the light a little bit. And looking at the same setting, there we go. That looks the same to me. So obviously you can see that the timing is right and the draw stop, the limb stops are actually hitting the limb pads at the exact same time. So now let's check and see what our holding weight actually is. Now when we get into the holding weight side of things, see what we got here. 15.8. 15.8 was the lightest that I actually saw on the scale. So that's what we'll go with. So while I have the bow here at the minimum amount of let off, I also want to check the draw length and see what changed, because I know that it's definitely shorter. Let's see how much. So when I measured this before, it was 28.25 to the mark that I made right above the pivot of my grip, and now it's 27.75. So it changed a ½ inch. The actual draw length of this bow in the minimum let off setting is actually now 29.5, where it was 30 inches before. So there's a couple things you can do there. If you are 30-inch draw and you want to shoot it like this in the lowest let off setting, I would suggest getting a ½ inch longer mod, putting that one on here, and then doing the same thing, moving the draw or the limb stops to the minimum amount of let off, and then you should be right at that 30-inch mark. There are a couple other ways that you can change the draw length. I don't suggest these, but if you have no other means of changing the draw length, this would actually work as well. Number one, you could put a ½ inch longer string on the bow. Now what will happen when you do that is you'll gain poundage, because the cams are now rotating a little bit further around, and so the poundage will go up. Also, you could twist up the cables instead of putting a longer string on. However, when you start twisting up the cables, you're also doing the exact same thing that you were doing when you put a ½ inch longer string on it, and that is you're making the cams over rotate their position, so the poundage is still going to go up. Now, the bow is obviously adjustable for weight, so maybe you could adjust that out, but at the same time, like I said, I would rather just put that ½ inch longer mod on, just for the simple fact that the bow would stay closer to the spec that the manufacturer has built this for. Just a quick recap: after we adjusted the limb stops to the minimum amount of let off, the bow was holding 15.9 pounds, still drawing 59.5, so that's an effective let off of about 73%, which is still good, but it's definitely a more holding weight than I had it previously set up at 88% let off. So this baby's going back to that setting after we're done with all this, because I'm looking forward to hunting with a bow with 88% let off. The next thing I want to show you though is how effective these binary cam systems are when you get them out of time, and how to adjust the limb stops in order to change the way it feels at full draw. So my next step is to move the limb stops back out to maximum let off. It's very simple. Loosen this up, slide it right back out to the full let off position, which is as far away from the center of the bow as you can possibly get. So I'm going to take the bow now to the bow press and add 4 twists to the bottom cable. Now it wouldn't matter if I was adding it to the bottom or the top, it's irrelevant, but I've already written on the board over here that I was going to add 4 twists to the bottom cam, so I better go ahead and do that. I'm intentionally getting the cam timing out of sync with each other so I can loosen up the limb stops and reset them where they're equally in time hitting the limb pads. And I want to show you how easy that is to adjust this bow even when the cams are out of time. When we get into the tuning aspects of this bow later on, whether it be paper tuning or bare shaft tuning, whatever, there is sometimes benefits to actually shooting the bow where it's a little out of time, because we're all individual shooters and we all do things a little bit differently. So the bow is actually a little bit adjustable to fit your style of shot, and that's what I want to show you later on. But right now we're just going to discuss how to readjust and reset everything. All right, now I want to show you the timing. Remember, I adjusted the limb stops all the way out, and the top one is hitting, but the bottom one is obviously off. So look at the cam timing itself. Now remember how we looked at the limbs and that screw. So see where that's at this point in time, the screw is not quite to the edge of the limb. And if you look up here at the top, it's a long ways from the edge of the limb. So you can see there's a big difference in the timing of the two cams. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this bottom draw stop up down here and let it fall against that limb pad and then tighten it back up, and that will be my new limb stop timing, and that will be equal. So now let's check the draw weight and the holding weight, since I've got the limb stops set where they're right on. Okay, drop full draw. Okay, now let's let up a little bit and see what we get for holding weight. £9.9 is the lightest that it would actually go to now, since I made the change in the cable length. After making the change to the cable, I also want to check the draw length and see what happened there. So it looks like it's almost back out to the original length of 28 1/4, but it's a little bit shy of that, so it's about 28 1/8. So my actual draw length now is about 29 7/8 draw length. After adding 4 twists to the bottom cable, the pounders went up to 60.7 pounds with a holding weight of 9.9 pounds. And again, that's the maximum let-off setting with the cams in this particular time. And that's about an 84% let-off. So now what I'm going to do is leave the cam timing in the exact same position, but I want to see what the minimum amount of let-off is with the cam timing a little bit off, like it is here. So to achieve the maximum amount of let-off available when your cams aren't in sync, what you're doing is you're looking for the cam that is furthest advanced in the position, like if you're drawing the bow back. So it should be rotated back. In this position, or this condition, since I twisted the bottom cable, the top cam is the one that's furthest in that position. So I want to adjust the limb stop all the way away from the center of the bow as I possibly can. And then I'll loosen up the bottom limb stop, draw the bow back, and allow it to just rest on the limb pad. And then when the timing is right, top and bottom limb stops, I tighten the bottom down, and then we're good to go. So the same applies in reverse for the minimum amount of let-off. So whichever direction the cam, it's furthest rotated in, like the bow is cycling forward, you would loosen the bottom, move it all the way in towards the center, because remember, now you're trying to get to the minimum amount of let-off available. Move it all the way in towards the cam, or towards the center of the bow, and then loosen the top, and when you draw it back and the bottom hits, you want to readjust the top to where the timing hits the same as the bottom. So I made the adjustments to the limb stops to the minimum amount of let off that's possible with the cams set at the previous setting. And we're going to check the holding weight and the draw length. £12.4 is the minimum amount that I could get with the cam set at this time. So while I got the bow at full draw, I want to go ahead and measure the draw length. And I'm getting about 28 inches, so we're going to go ahead and call that about 29 3/4. So you can see that the binary cam system on this Ritual is very adjustable, and it has its fullest amount of range when the cams are set at dead even time. So you can gain the maximum amount of let off with the cams set dead even. You can gain the minimum amount of let off with the cam set dead even. And I'm going to show you this chart in just a second. And what you're going to notice is that this cam has a tremendous amount of range in it. So that makes it very customizable for you as a shooter. And that's something that I appreciate in these bows because I know that I'm not just a cookie cutter shooter. I have to be able to customize things to fit me and my shooting style. Also, something along the lines of shooting, this bow is 33 inches axle to axle. So when you measure the overall length of the bow, it's like 37 and a half, 37 and 3/4. And when I say overall, I'm talking from tip to tip. So while I got this bow at full draw, I'm going to go ahead and measure it and just see what it actually is axle to axle. Remember, this is a 30-inch draw. So axle to axle, I'm getting about 29 and an eighth at full draw. And I'm going to say overall tip to tip, my ruler only goes to 33 inches and it looks like it's just a little bit more than that. So probably about 33 and a half tip to tip when this bow is at full draw. So, you know, that to me speaks volumes, because that means this bow is going to be stable. It's not going to be that little pocket rocket bow you stick in your pocket that, yeah, it's great that it's small and it's easy to maneuver around, but the accuracy level is not there because it's just not stable enough. So I really appreciate that about this particular model. I love the grip on this bow. Like I said, guys, you got to get out to your dealers and try these bows. There's just no reason not to try every bow on the shelf instead of just going after one particular bow that your buddy shoots and you happen to say, hey, that's a great bow. Go try them. Go get the feel. I mean, you're spending the money, so make sure you walk out the door with the best bow possible that suits you and suits your needs. So here's a look at the chart that I've been making as I've been going along here. You'll see it 88% down to 73% on Letoff. With the cams set at even timing, and honestly that's still a tremendous amount of Letoff at 84% and 79% with the cams out of time. But there's a good look at all the information. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for episode 2 where we install the arrow rest. Take the shootability challenge and honor the ritual.